Hey peeps, I watched a heap of more movies and I'm gonna run my mouth about them. Now the reason I do these longer type of recent watches is because when I'm working on bigger projects during my work week, it's really hard to sit down and watch a film that I haven't seen, whether it be in theaters or in streaming services. So I take time to focus on watching movies that I haven't caught up with and just do these short reviews in a slightly bigger video. I'll still be doing shorter reviews for individual movies or maybe a couple, but as far as situations like this, it's a system that I found that works pretty well. So I'll just stick with that for a while. So let's go ahead and get into it and talk about the movies I've watched. So first I watched The Weekend Away and it was kind of meh. It wasn't terrible, but it's one of those films that doesn't do much with its concept beyond the bare minimum. The story is incredibly shallow and the characters weren't very likable or interesting with the exception of maybe the taxi driver character. The plot ultimately goes exactly where you expect it to go. The plot points it hits pretty much do nothing to subvert the usual kidnapping / murder mystery plot you've seen in a billion other thriller mystery type movies. I predicted about 90% of the movie after certain characters were introduced. The performances teetered on serviceable to pretty decent, but that's about the most positive thing I can say about this entire movie. For the most part, it's just pretty boring, honestly. The cinematography almost gave me the feeling that this might as well just been a Hallmark thriller film that kids can sit through. There's not a single ounce of tension or excitement during the action scenes. They're shot with no energy or exhilaration whatsoever. The music was your standard run-of-the-mill thriller type music that you can get off of YouTube. There's a character whose voice sounds obviously dubbed and it was so painful to my tiny sized ears. It's like this film was made with no one trying to make this stand out. There's hardly any tension or sense of urgency. There's a lack of progression that gets the viewer invested in the plot or story. And now I'm gonna go into major spoilers about a few things that bother me even though this movie isn't worth anyone's time. But skip here if you're still down to watch this movie. So the plot is about how a girl's rich friend disappears in Croatia, Southeast Europe after a fun night out, and after she gets murdered we learn that it wasn't the cop like she thought it was. It was her husband who's been cheating on her with her friend, and her friend was going to tell her, but he said, "No you don't, bitch," and he accidentally kills her. But considering that the cop has a history of killing women too, you mean to tell me they assumed it was him on the security camera that killed the main character's friend and not her husband? The camera seems to have decent enough quality to indicate that it was a completely different person, but the film cheats by quickly cutting away while explaining reasons for why the cop did it. You actually think that the audience is that stupid? Oh god. And then there's a scene where the nerdy guy has surveillance on everybody in their rooms and he explains that people have parties, but you mean to tell me that security cameras are placed to invade the privacy of the very residents that pay to be there? I thought most cameras in hotels are in public areas such as lobbies, hallways, and pools, but this comes up once and it's never addressed again. So why are they also in bedrooms conveniently? That's entirely illegal. It seems too stupid and contrived to make sense to me. And how did he delete all of those messages that fast when the girl tried to grab the phone? Cheap and stupid reasons, that's why. And I also want to address this movie's irritating transparency. This movie is clearly trying to communicate female empowerment over men, and while I'm not really a feminist or anything, I'm all for films that show women empowerment over the dark side of men. But it also helps that the men characters aren't easily incompetent and stupid. Every single male character in this film gets easily circumvented in ways that just nerf them. If a male character did something that is clearly morally reprehensible, it would make sense that they would do anything in their power to prevent the main character from revealing this to other characters, right? But they do the bare minimum and get whooped easily by the female protagonist. It would help to have some tension and maybe the obstacle is difficult for the female character, but this movie drills the anti-male theme so deeply that female characters have to win quickly and easily to communicate that theme, and it's incredibly annoying, or they just want the plot to keep moving. Overall, I did not care for this movie. It's not really even worth the 80-minute runtime, shockingly. It felt lazy and rushed with a twist that anyone using their brain could see from a 60-mile radius. I am so glad that this is a Netflix exclusive because it is not a theater experience, and I'm giving it a 2 out of 5 stars. And next I saw The Batman, and this is not a solidified review because I feel I didn't give this movie a proper viewing the first time. I did not like this movie at first, but the more I think about it, the more I'm driven to watch this movie one more time, and I've definitely fully appreciated it. So for what I didn't like about it at first was how overly dark it was. The chase scene was poorly shot with little to no sense of clarity. I liked Patterson as Batman, but not really as Bruce Wayne. But it was more frustrating how after 2 years trailers, he's trying to figure out what he wants to be as a symbol, which kind of contradicts why you dress up as a bat. And the 3-hour runtime was completely unnecessary. The highlight of this movie is Paul Dano and Colin Farrell, and that's pretty much it. Now, I'm rating this a 2.5 out of 5 only now, but when this film releases on HBO Max this month, I'll do a separate review, and this one will be pretty much irrelevant, so just hang tight, my beeps. And the next movie I watched was The Rescue, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was both engaging and consistently intense. I found the divers to be very interesting characters, and I was rooting for them the entire time. This documentary will work equally as a movie if you ask me, as they did have to do recreations during the rescue scenes. And had I not known that after seeing the movie, I would have thought someone was crazy enough to even record everything that happened. The music wasn't too standoutish and might have been the most forgettable aspect, but it's a very well paced and pretty inspiring and emotionally involving documentary. I definitely recommend it to everyone. It's on Disney Plus currently, and I'm gonna give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. And next was Drive My Car, directed by Ryusuke Hamaguchi. The film was nominated at the Academy Awards for Best Directing and Best Adapted Screenplay. I didn't think it was a perfect movie, but I did enjoy it despite the 3-hour runtime. It was very sentimental and had a very calming atmosphere the entire time. It's well shot, although the cinematography never really stood out to me. It was more so the wide shots that stayed with me, specifically when they were driving rather than anything else. The performances were nuanced and subtle, and I liked the lack of extreme emotions, but just a minimal amount that served the story. The characters were all decent, but not entirely memorable. The only character I really loved was the young girl played by that singer Joy. Her entire arc was so engaging that I wish the movie actually started with her being the main character. Both main characters' dynamics overall were pretty strong, and I felt the emotions the film intended, but I feel the roles could have used a switch. My biggest gripe with this movie is that some scenes go on unnecessarily too long. The film has dialogue-driven scenes that go on forever and almost come off as just meaningless. I mean, the point could have been made, but they run it too extra to the ground for 20 freaking minutes as if I'm supposed to be impressed or something. And also, this film does have some pacing issues where I feel scenes could have been taken out that really didn't need to be there. Without spoiling anything, one involves the development of a play. I mean, it still paid off, but trim that point down and I think there would have been more of a focus. Overall, I really liked it. I definitely cried a bit at the end, I'm not gonna lie, I can cry. But I can also see a shorter movie having just as much of an impact, so I'm gonna give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It's on HBO Max if you want to check it out. And next was Ballad of a White Cow, and I was a little disappointed with this movie. I haven't seen anything else from this director, but it looked promising until the first frame of the movie presented the fakest looking CGI that I've ever seen. The movie was just meandering and slow, and I usually love slow movies, but the plot just didn't really have much weight to it. I thought the initial concept was pretty interesting, but the movie just had no energy. The direction and cinematography was decent to me, but most of the movie was just stagnant shot composition. The film left me bored for half the time, unfortunately. I mean, see this if you want, it's on Mubi. I feel I'll never see this again, and I'm giving it a generous 2.5 out of 5 stars, mostly because of the performances. So yeah, that's it. And next was The House, and it was decent. The film has 3 short films that pertained in this single massive house. The highlight is definitely the stop motion animation. It was pretty fantastic, and each short had its own distinct art style and tone. My biggest criticism though is that I wish all 3 shorts were clear about what the they were trying to communicate thematically. They feel almost completely disconnected and unrelated, yet at the same time I couldn't really get a sense of the centralized theme. Most films that have shorts carried through a central theme and messages that manifest throughout the shorts, but the only thing I got out of this one was that weird stuff took place in the house. I might have to watch this again, and maybe I'll take more time to do that. I did appreciate how it was occasionally very intense and disturbing at times, a lot of creepy imagery that I appreciated, but I felt very disconnected to all 3 shorts. But it's on Netflix if you want to see it, and I'm just gonna have to give it a 2.5 out of 5 stars. And next was Words Bubble Up Like Soda Pop, and I enjoyed it. This is a film that I think caters more to the younger teens. It's very quirky and lighthearted. The characters are all pretty likable and their motivations are fairly clear. The standout of this movie though is definitely the animation. The animation is vibrant, colorful, and lively, which was very appropriate for the film's tone. And the second is the music, which was actually my favorite aspect of this movie bar none. The music was composed by Kensuke Yoshio and comprises somewhat of lo-fi poppy type Japanese music that just elevates the film's universe and the scenes. I love the music so much that I actually downloaded many of the tracks that stood out to me on my phone. The plot wasn't too memorable, but I like where everything ended up. It was a pretty touching and cute ending. This is worth a watch with your kids or just as a family overall on Netflix. It's pretty accessible and inoffensive. The themes that the film explored were admirable and competently communicated, and I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 stars. And next up we have The French Dispatch, and I found it very enjoyable. Now I personally feel like this might be Wes Anderson's least accessible movie. Not that it's a very complicated movie in a sense, but the way the story unfolds doesn't really spell things out to the viewer, so I can understand why some who probably haven't experienced a lot of Wes Anderson films prior might be turned off by this movie. The film is beautifully shot and directed as you'd expect, and Anderson seems to be consistently improving one movie to the next. Every single symmetric stationary shot and frame is perfect, combined with persistent tight coordination. The performances are all very strong, and Anderson makes a lot of different presentation choices that actually make sense within the universe. My favorite aspect of the film is that not only does every single set and clothing design perfectly encapsulate the time and setting, but some scenes change its letterbox format and it feels so reminiscent of the late filmmaker Jean-Luc Godard. And midway through the movie, I ordered one of my favorite films of his on Criterion, so thanks Anderson for making me spend money. Now the letterbox shifts can sometimes be questionable, but other than that, I thought this was a solid feature. It's not close to Anderson's better films, and it's your typical Wes Anderson casting choices, but it's still a visual and aesthetic treat with a fun tone and a smooth pace, despite the complexity of the narrative. The Wes Anderson fans will definitely eat this one up, and I'm gonna give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. And next was the latest Guillermo del Toro feature, The Nightmare Alley remake, nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. This is by far the del Toro film that I feel is the most grounded. There's still aspects of fantastical or surreal elements, but they're all in the confines of the reality, and I really appreciated the film for that. The film is a slow burn, but it never once grows stale at all. The film keeps you engaged throughout as you're just waiting for the curtain to be metaphorically pulled. The cast overall is very good, even if everyone was pretty much acting circles around Bradley Cooper. The screenplay is more than solid, and del Toro once again excels in atmosphere, which is consistently both dark and vibrant. I'll definitely be seeing this one a second time, and I'm giving it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. And the next movie that I watched was I Want You Back, the second feature film by Jason Orelli, and it was below average. Unfortunately, I didn't laugh at a single joke. I didn't really like any of the characters all that much, and for some reason this movie felt longer than it needed to be. The only real highlight of this movie was Jenny Slate, who pretty much carried this movie to its entirety with her natural acting talents and charisma. Charlie Day was just Charlie Day playing the same character he has up to this point. Scott Eastwood was shockingly decent, and Gina Rodriguez was okay in her role, I guess. But yeah, I felt like this was just another not Judd Apatow type comedy, as every single trope of this type of comedy you can think of, and I was getting very bored throughout. Now the ending was admittedly a smart way to end it, but the bulk of it did nothing for me really. I mean, see it if you want, but I'm gonna give it a 2.5 out of 5 stars. The next film is a documentary called Lucy and Desi, directed by Amy Poehler, and thank God for this movie because this one washes the taste of Sorkin's film Being the Ricardos clean out of my mouth. Now I guess because it's a documentary, it's obviously going to have a keener perspective on Lucy and Desi, but overall this was just a better film. It was a more emotional and insightful experience than Being the Ricardos, and the documentary overall was just well put together. It told us much information as it needed to, and it was a very touching watch. I really enjoyed hearing the details of Lucy and Desi's relationship from young to old, and it felt like the most complete documentary you could possibly make it, presenting information that I wasn't even aware of prior. I recommend this to lovers of I Love Lucy and just a fan of those two in general, and I'm gonna give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. And then was the ProtoJ, which was meh. Now I like Maggie Q and I'm glad she's back in action, but the film overall was just very average and uninspired. These espionage type action movies never really do it for me anyway because everyone's motivations are partially scribbled out or just uninteresting. I mean, the performances were decent, nothing special. Samuel L. Jackson played Samuel L. Jackson, and Michael Keaton was probably the best out of everyone because he added some levity and charm to this movie. The action scenes were kind of generic and lacked distinction from others in its genre. I did, however, enjoy the overall concept, and I liked how it all ended, but I'm not going to remember 3/4 of this freaking movie, so I'm just going to give it 2.5 out of 5 stars. And next was The Mitchells vs. the Machines, and it was kind of bad. Look, I'm sorry, but I found this movie to be annoying as all hell. The animation wasn't bad, but it wasn't anything impressive. The movie was just trying way too freaking hard. It tries to be so expressive and vibrant and visually stimulating, but it ends ends up being an ADHD level obnoxious and overly obvious mess. The script just sucks. I don't like any of the characters, especially since this movie seemed more about the father and daughter dynamic rather than all 4 main characters. I hate animated movies where little kids have freaking adult voices. Why do we keep doing that? Stop it. It's creepy and weird and lazy. The villain's motivations were so superficial and underdeveloped, and the plot is just chock full of holes. You know, I'd do a full review if this movie won Best Animated Feature at the Academies, but it being nominated is already bad enough, but I don't feel like wasting any more time on this annoying movie. I mean, kids will dig it, but personally, this movie's only worth 1 star. Sorry, I just didn't like it. And next was A Hero, directed by Ashghar Farhadi, who directed A Separation, The Past, and The Salesman. The latter 2 on my watch list. And it was really good. It was well written, as well shot as A Separation. The story has excellent performances throughout, which all feel organic. The screenplay is solid, and the stakes were consistently raising with intensity. I really enjoyed how the plot unraveled, and observed great exercise and tested morality. And much like Farhadi's A Separation, he ends the film perfectly. Very minor plot contrivances, but not enough to ruin the experience. And I'm gonna give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. And lastly, I saw Everything Everywhere All at Once, and it was pretty amazing. This was by the Daniels, and they were behind films like Swiss Army Man, which I thought was okay, but don't remember much of it, and then The Death of Dick Long, which I would recommend you check out. But it's safe to say that this is by far their most ambitious and best work thus far. They're pretty much the craziest filmmakers to step into the medium, and they're a godsend if you ask me, because everything is wild. Michelle Yeoh is outstanding in both the emotional performances and the physical stunt work. The entirety of the cast is great all around, actually. The script is phenomenal, giving us some stellar characterization to its entirety. The fight choreography is brilliant despite some notices and manipulated speed, but that's always something in action movies. And the varied score is both energetic and also sentimental and appropriate. My biggest credit for this movie, without spoiling it, is how well it explores the multiverse and quantum mechanics. The rules are explained in such a way that you can understand it, but also smartly acknowledges that not everything is going to make complete sense, because that's pretty much the multiverse theory and the quantum mechanics in a nutshell. Overall, I'm really looking forward to seeing this again. It's a great film that channels many elements and balances them all perfectly, with a very strong screenplay and top-notch direction from the Daniels. Such great use of foreshadowing, symbolism, and reincorporation. The editing is some of the best I've ever seen in any movie ever. Definitely one of the most creative, high-energy films that I've seen in years, and it's my favorite movie so far this year, and I'm gonna give it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Alright peeps, I plan on covering more movies I need to catch up on, so you'll probably see another part maybe, but I have more projects coming in the future, specifically a certain horror movie from 2019, and I still need to finish my Matrix review if Warner Brothers doesn't slap a copyright claim on me, but we'll see. So peace out and love y'all.